So let's reflect on the life and legacy of Terror Lekota. The former Finance Minister, Trevor Manuel, is on the line to us this morning. Trevor, good morning, and thanks for your time. And our condolences to you as well, as someone who was really in the trenches with Terror Lekota. One of the headlines this morning telling us that he was a pioneer for democratic South Africa, and much of that fighting for democracy was in the UDF. Both of you were in the upper echelons of the UDF.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. Good morning to you and your viewers. I think that in the fullness of time, Mosiuoa's passing will be understood as a major loss. His determination to build a democratic South Africa was unparalleled in many respects. I got to know him in 1982 when he just came off Robben Island, saw him rise and pull us along in the construction of the UDF. His energy was boundless. He got across the country, he spoke to people everywhere, and was very, very determined to ensure that we could deliver a democratic South Africa. I forget the number of times he was detained between that point in 1982 and 1994, but it was countless times. He crossed every part of South Africa in order to reach people, and people was his forte. After 94, as you know, he first became Premier of the Free State, and there he did amazing things. I mean, he went and spoke to some very recalcitrant Afrikaner farmers to try and bring them across the line into democracy. And he just called them up and said, I'm coming to your house for braai on Sunday. And people always welcomed him. There was a split because of his determination to root out bad behavior in the ANC. And then he came to Cape Town as initially Deputy Chair of the National Council of Provinces, and then later Chair of the NCOP. That was it. It was his energy post-Polokwane that sort of split from the ANC to form COPE. And he's one of those individuals who didn't allow party political affiliations to stand in the way of friendship. And we remained friends, and I can say without fear of contradiction, right to the very end of his life. He was a truly remarkable being and a wonderful friend.
Yeah, you start off by telling us, you know, in the fullness of time, we will understand perhaps more clearly the legacy of Mosiuoa Terror. And it's easy to forget, I suppose, isn't it? Just given everything that's happened since the Polokwane Congress, how COPE was formed. We know that it didn't make it back to the National Assembly again. After the last election, after 2004, but, pardon me, 2014, I think it was, or perhaps even later. But
no, 2024.
2024, yeah, thank you. And it's easy to get caught up in that kind of recent history, right? COPE, its implosion, its failure to come up as an opposition party. And so we sort of discard the rest and perhaps more important history of a person.
Yeah, in fact, you know, if you look at the point in 2009 when COPE broke onto the scene, they could easily have become the largest opposition party. It was that big, that strong, but holding it together, holding opposition parties together in South Africa is always very difficult. But I think that if you look at the soul of Mosiuoa Terror, you'll understand he was much bigger than the party, actually.
Yeah. There's going to be, obviously, a continued remembering of his legacy. What kind of legacy do you think he leaves on his current peers, perhaps even the president? And I'm not sure you want to wade into these kind of political waters right now.
I don't want to wade into those waters, but I do want to talk about his boundless energy. Saying that when we first met in 1982, he'd just come off Robben Island after serving 5 years there and about 2 years awaiting trial. And he stepped right into the fray of building a new movement. And that was so fundamentally important. We needed to be pulled along and pulled up. It's hard to look back, Michelle, and realize just the impact of the repression of the 1960s and then post-1976 and what it did to a young generation of activists. But it took the bravery and the boldness of somebody like Mosiuoa Terror to be a great inspiration to my generation. And that was the admiration that we had for him. And that admiration could extend way beyond party political lines.
Yeah, born in 1948, also the advent of the apartheid system itself. We say it almost in passing as a throwaway line that he was in the trenches with the UDF against the fight against apartheid, for the fight against apartheid. But tell us about what that means, being in the trenches in the UDF at the height of that fight.
You know, one of the big attributes that Terror Lekota had, and the name Terror was a football nickname that he got because he was so terrorizing of goalkeepers. That was the name, Terror. So he was Terror Lekota for that reason. But, you know, he would get into a car, Toyota 1600, alone and move into towns and mobilize people and network with people. He had that kind of personality that could arrive in a small town and just meet people, go to the local cafe, meet people, network with them. It was an unbelievably risky enterprise because repression was as harsh as it was in the early 80s, but he didn't allow it to stand in his way. He was, as a result of the Delmas trial in the late 1980s, again convicted of terrorism, back onto Robben Island. He was released, I think, in about 1991, or could have been 89 on appeal. But, you know, he that fearlessness was really the great inspiration to hundreds of thousands of young people. People were prepared to follow him and in his leadership.
As you take us on this walk down memory lane, Trevor, is it bringing up those memories and perhaps giving you a chance as well to reflect on your time in the UDF with Terror Lekota?
You know, I did a podcast last week and I spoke about this. It wasn't about this, but I spoke about this because it was truly phenomenal when we launched the UDF in Mitchell's Plain in August of 1983. A number of people sitting in their armchairs didn't give us a chance. The question is, what allowed us to break through against P.W. Botha's National Party repressive machinery? It was the ability to analyze, understand, and mobilize people. And you couldn't look at that period without understanding the contribution of a Mosiuoa Terror. I mean, just pause for a moment, Michelle. I don't know. I assume that you were very young in those years, but between the launch of the UDF in 1983 and the declaration of the first state of emergency in July of 1985, it was just a little blip in the greater history of this country, but it was an unbelievably powerful blip where people were mobilized across the length and breadth of the country. That was the power of somebody who was as visionary as Mosiuoa was, and in many respects as fearless as he was as he went about his daily work.
Yeah. The death of Mosiuoa Lekota giving us an opportunity this morning to go back to our important history, parts of our important history as a country. Trevor Manuel, let me thank you for your time on Newzroom Afrika. Let's continue reflecting on the passing of Mosiuoa Terror. Now UDM leader and Deputy Minister of Defence Bantu Holomisa also joining us for his reflections. Mr. Holomisa, thanks very much for your time this morning, and our condolences as well to you. You and Mosiuoa Terror are somewhat of an interesting two when compared side by side, both of you emerging from the anti-apartheid struggle and from the ANC, in fact, to become opposition leaders.
Well, firstly, let me pass my condolences to the family, to his political party members, and his friends. Terror Lekota's role in the struggle is well documented. And I was happy when they formed the COPE because they strengthened the opposition benches and in realizing that this country doesn't need one-party dominance. The advantage about him and his team is that they did the passage of the struggle. So the opposition parties were always dubbed as bunch of apartheid people. But when Lekota came and his team, then the situation changed completely. And we are thankful about his role in promoting the ethics of good governance and also in strengthening the checks and balances as enshrined in our constitution. And I hope that the South Africans will give him a respect he deserves.
COPE as an opposition party, it's in many ways a very sad story, right? That COPE over the years, eventually, to the point of implosion, didn't make it back to the National Assembly after the 2024 elections. But at the time of the formation of COPE, you as Bantu Holomisa and as the leader of the UDM, you were encouraging COPE on the formation of that party as an opposition.
Oh, yes, definitely. Like I said, when they joined the opposition benches, it changed the political landscape in the opposition benches and then indeed in this country. And we are thankful for them to have joined us. And unfortunately, the Terror Lekota, it seems like their project was diluted by agents which were deployed by the ruling party, and it didn't work.
You know, I was just in conversation with Trevor Manuel, who, as you will know, Mr. Holomisa, was in the trenches with Terror Lekota, particularly in the UDF in the 80s and 90s. And part of what we were reflecting on is that it's very easy to remember someone by the very recent history. So the implosion of COPE, the fact that the party didn't make it back to the National Assembly in 2024, and its failure perhaps as an opposition for the reasons that you've now pointed out as well. But we forget about the rest of the history, right? Mosiuoa Terror Lekota was someone who was born at the advent of apartheid, 1948, and then spent his life, his adult life, fighting that system.
Oh, yes, there's no doubt about that. Like I said earlier, that his role in the struggle is well documented. And the first time I saw him was when we went to play in Matatiel. I think the school was Maria Zell. He was tormenting our backline at that stage. I was studying at Jonglizwe College for Sons of Chiefs in Solo that time. But he then, of course, after leaving school, he ended up in jail and worked alongside with Mr. Mandela. And I think the record must be, people must remember that also he played a leading role in bringing National Party and ANC to work together, because Terror believed and he lived that philosophy of non-racialism, as well as to unite South Africans. That's why when he left ANC, he joined the benches of the opposition with ease.
Bantu Holomisa is the UDM leader joining us this morning as we continue to reflect on the life of Mosiuoa Terror Lekota. Mr. Holomisa, thanks very much for your time this morning. It's 17 minutes after 9 o'clock. Let's continue with our rolling coverage around the death in the early hours of this morning of Terror Lekota. Newzroom Africa's politics editor, Vuyo Mvoko, joins us here in studio. Vuyo, good morning.
Hi,
just speaking to Trevor Manuel, it's so interesting. You know, we send our condolences to his family and his comrades, but these are always moments that are so important for us to reflect on South Africa's history, right? And Trevor Manuel telling me terror comes from how he terrorized goalkeepers on the football field.
Yeah, as a soccer player back in the day. In fact, as I was coming to the office, today he is known as the co-founder
Right.
of COPE, but also being held responsible by many for COPE's very demise, which I think it's understandable. That was big. I mean, for a party that came closest in those years to challenging the ANC's domination, it was a big factor. 2009, 90 seats. Fast forward to 2024, 0. Done. So he enjoys a place in South African politics that really speaks a lot about who he was, but also who he became, but also how the politics of this country actually involved. But narrowly defining him as COPE's co-founder and later holding him responsible for its demise, I think is very narrow and doesn't do justice, in my view, to his legacy, because he was a struggle hero through and through.
One of the headlines this morning saying, it's on News 24, a pioneer for a democratic South Africa.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what he was. I mean, he's a guy who sacrificed a large part of his childhood involved in student politics.
Most of his adult life.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and most of his adult life as well, from organizing those Frelimo rallies that were meant to celebrate, Mozambique's independence from Portugal, but which gave our struggle the impetus that it needed, because remember, back then a lot of leaders were in exile or in prison, so these were the young people who were keeping the struggle going against all odds, for which he ended up on Robben Island. But coming out of Robben Island and still being unperturbed, still going forward pretty much the way he did before he went to prison. And then, of course, subsequently having to face prison yet again. But these are the people, together with your Reverend Dr. Alan Busaks, with your Mohammed Vali Musas,
Trevor Manuel, who we spoke
with
to
your
earlier.
Trevor Manuels, these are all the people, Mefi Murubes, who kept the home fires burning and kept things going until a lot of our leaders got released, from prison, others came back from exile, and he just continued from there.
Yeah,
so he has a rich and very proud legacy, and his COPE moments shouldn't define his legacy.
Yeah, it's just so much more than that. I want to bring in ANC veteran, Reverend Frank Shikane. You're on the line to us in Johannesburg, and I'm sure you would have heard what Vuyo's been describing to us, this legacy of Mosiuoa Terror Lekota, which is just so much more than even COPE as an opposition party, and the fact that it didn't work out in the end, with the party not returning to the National Assembly after 2024. But in your mind, Reverend Shikane, who is Terror Lekota?
Yeah, no, I must say, firstly express condolences to the family and the rest of the country. I must say that it would be wrong to reduce him to a party. I think it would be wrong, because he is much more than one party. He has been in the struggle as long as I know him. The first time I met him was at TEFLO, which is the University of the North then and now Limpopo. And he was the secretary of the SRC when I arrived at TEFLO, and they welcomed us at the station, treated us like kings, as first-year students. And within 2 weeks, of course, the university closed because the university had banned SASO on campus and also extracted any reference to SASO from the diary of the students, and the university closed down. But he was in leadership. I know him from the beginning as a leader, and he continued to be a leader, and became part of the United Democratic Front, of which I was part of, and he played a very critical role. He was the most exciting orator. If you gave him a platform, he was able to move the masses to resist against the apartheid system. When we were in the treason trial together, again, we were forced to listen to all the speeches because they were charging us. One of the charges was what we said to people, and that was treasonable. And his speeches, together with those of Alan Busak, were the most exciting to listen to. But he had a clarity of mind of what we wanted to achieve. But there was something about it in terms of talks. He believed in talking. He believed in solving problems. He was ahead. I mean, at the time when we didn't think it was the right time to negotiate with the apartheid system, he was ready. He kept on talking about a national convention. Let's get all the people together. And indeed, ultimately, that happened at Odessa, and we had a settlement. He was part of the struggle. He was part of the new government and renewal of the country until, of course, the time when Mbeki was removed.
Yeah, Reverend
and it is, yeah.
Reverend Chikane, I just want to reflect because, you know, we talk about Mosiuoa Lekota leaving the ANC after decades in the party. That was in 2008 after the Polokwane conference, moving on to form COPE. But we don't really reflect, do we, on what a painful decision that must have been. Being in the trenches of the anti-apartheid movement, being with the ANC for decades, for most of your adult life, and then making a decision like that.
Yeah, no, it was a very painful decision. By the way, I don't think Terror Lekota left the ANC because he was disloyal to the ANC. I think he was against that action, which did not make sense, which actually disrupted the ANC, and we're still paying in terms of consequences of what happened during that time. But he was one of those who felt if they remove Mbeki in the manner in which they removed him, he can't stay, he must form an alternative, find an alternative. I mean, some of us did not agree with the strategy, but we differed many times on the way about how you dealt with challenges you face. So I don't think anybody in the ANC can say Terror was disloyal or Terror sold out. No,
yeah.
I don't believe in that. There was a moment that made some of our comrades to take that stand, and we must respect them for having taken that stand to make a point. But nevertheless, he continued to stand for justice and the people of South Africa from wherever he was. And that's why I'm saying we can't reduce him to the party code. He's more than that, and he's been in the struggle as long as I know him. I mean, it was 1972 when I arrived at the university and found him as secretary of the SRC.
Reverend.
And then, of course, we played soccer with him. We had a club
your final comments on his soccer career, because that's where the name Terror comes from, right?
Yeah, I didn't know where he got it from, but when I met him at TEFNOP, he was already Terror. And he terrorized you at the sports ground as he did in the struggle to terrorize the system. But he's a very likable person. He chaired the African National Congress executive for 2 terms when I was a member of the National Executive Committee, and he was just an exciting person. I mean, it was good to have him, but I think he has served his time, and it was time for him to leave. I know he wasn't well, and when the time comes, I think we should accept it and give him a good send-off.
Reverend Frank Chikane, let me thank you for your time this morning as we continue to reflect on the life of Mosiuoa Terror Lekota. Vuyo, you were listening to that interview.
Yeah, in fact,
you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, it reminded me of 2 particular instances. One was in 2005. The ANC had a National General Council at the University of Pretoria. At the time, then ANC President Thabo Mbeki had removed Jacob Zuma, who was his deputy as the country's deputy, but also Jacob Zuma could no longer function as the deputy president for the ANC. And that particular conference had nothing to do with those matters, because the issue there, or what it was about, which is what every NGC is about, is to review the policies, progress of the ANC midway through the NSC's term of office. But a lot of people forced the issue of Jacob Zuma to be discussed there and dealt with there. Of course, a tax was a proxy for Polokwane. Terror Lekota then gets to be mandated together with Smuts Ngonyama to actually communicate this issue to the party faithful, but also to us, the media, who were there. He struggled because Terror, what you see is what you get. He can't fake it. You know, if he feels particularly strongly about anything, he expresses his view, and it's like, you know how he speaks, and he has all these expressions and stuff. He struggles to explain this thing. And I remember Kgalema Motlanthe was Secretary General at the time, then intervening, saying the fact that Mosiuoa Terror Lekota doesn't like the decision doesn't make it a decision. It's a decision that this meeting took, and we all have to abide by it. And fast forward to Polokwane as well. When Thabo Mbeki was defeated by Jacob Zuma, he was more disappointed and more distraught than even Thabo Mbeki himself. Yeah. And those instances will, of course, the rest is history. As they say, he then went on to form COPE. But he was ANC through and through. But as I think Reverend Chekana was saying, forced by circumstances to take the positions that he actually took and stuck by, including when COPE was really on a bad footing, when it was clear that it was deteriorating at a faster speed than anyone had thought, he still stuck to his guns, even though a lot of people felt he was wrong. Yeah,
and I mean, speaking of telling it like it is, I think all journalists can attest to that as well. In an interview setting with Terror Lekota, he told it exactly like it was.